Oh. There was once a king who looked out upon his kingdom and thought, you know, the whole thing is pretty simple. But of course, me being king, how would I ever know? And looking down and up and from all around on this scene, life proclaimed, good little kingy, good boy. Note, the history of the development of the human mind has yet to be writ. Well, excluding the above. On one world, the only information of any value is that which has no point. There is a rumor that says some earthlings once went there, but left almost immediately. To speak of this singular, private human mental activity in terms metaphorical can make it sound either otherworldly and unfathomable or cartoonishly simple. But to speak of it plainly and directly at the outset seems to be more than most minds can initially take. A man wrote to the more promising, expert side of himself and asked, when men can describe something that they could do but are not doing, is the reason always either spiritual or psychological? That is it always caused by either ignorance or a weakness? And that edge of him, turned more toward the future, replied to him, saying, does not a rock still fall when released from your hand, no matter what theory you may support regarding such action? Instead of studying the religions, philosophies, and psychologies of man, one chap began considering what it is in man that drives him to invent such. The reason you so seldom find mystics in a neurologist's office is because they must perform the needed brain surgery on themselves. What can be really annoying to some is the fact that in the struggle to be more conscious, there is no wrong way to go about it. What many would call an unacceptable narrowing down of the focus. On one developing planet, it was decided to require nutrition facts to be placed on all books and other forms of information. But in short time, they had to abandon the idea. To exercise anything remotely resembling freedom, the mind must believe, in spite of all to the contrary, that it is free. The potential danger in a man understanding this seems so great that at first you might think that life would not permit it to occur. But since it does, you are left to ponder a situation which has, amongst its natural components, at least one with the theoretical ability to destroy the whole. And for those of you who consider this to the point of sufficient exhaustion, you can then look at it like this. When it comes to a man's mind, life either has a lot of faith in it or put a bit of humor in its construction. How to tell the difference between a fake mystic, a weak one, and a real one. A fake will claim not to know how to properly go about it, while a weak one will admit he knows how but can't quite do it, and a real one won't comment on the matter. There periodically appears unexpected holes in the DNA trail into which a man can profitably fall through history. An astounding antidote to the standard memory of the past. Still another version of a favorite of man's early myths says that, as punishment, God did not merely drive Adam from paradise, but made him swallow every possibility that existed other than himself, which was the origins of the race of ideas. Another thing that many find irritating about the activity to become more conscious is that being so doesn't prove you intellectually correct. What many would consider new heights in the waste of time category. A tourist tip one father proffered his son. The only way to take the civilizations that you'll visit as serious undertakings is to stare at them, damn near catatonically, and never, whatever you do, examine and think about them too closely. And later in life, the lad wondered whether the old man had actually said civilizations or something about the workings of one's own mind. Okay, for any of you who may have found the original version early this evening of this too sticky, here is an alternative one of the same, on the same thing. On one world, the only forms of conventional wisdom, such as proverbs and parables, that are considered to have any value are those which have no moral. Adage update. Those whom the gods wish to retard, they first, two periods, give access. A ruler, in the attempt to stop a wrangling that had long persisted in his kingdom between those who believed that men should wear only loose clothing and those who supported a more tailored look, proclaimed that henceforth the people should have no preference as to the cut of their attire, only for it to quickly come to pass that those who took his words to heart adopted the belief that they should now be dressing like the king. Is that what you call faithful subjects or what? Assuming that we're not actually talking about thought, that we're not talking about thoughts and not people. The distinct advantage to spending your life searching for the proper method is that it saves you from ever having to actually undertake it. In case you still haven't noticed, as soon as each person is born, life hands them a card making them a member of a particular cult. After a night of excessive, licentious eating and drinking, a man's mind said to his stomach, "Ah, but I pity how bad you will feel tomorrow due to your unwise choices." To which his stomach replied, "Weep not for me, old chum, for you will join me in my misery." Later in private, the mind tried to find a practical usage of a metaphorical interpretation of what had transpired. By the new old swimming hole was posted this sign. Okay, here's how it works. When you're dead, you don't feel separate from life. And also when you're more alive. Now enjoy yourselves, but remember, you may be asked to leave if you do not horse around. One man wrote a mystic, "Boy, but the stuff you talk about really confuses me." And the mystic replied in a huff, "What I talk about confuses you? Ha! That's nothing compared to what you say does to me." And the man immediately responded, "Well, how do you? Who the hell do you think you are, other than me?" And the mystic couldn't contain himself and shot back, "True, partially, but you should say, who am I in potential, other than you?" And the man was a bit ticked off that once again the mystic had the last word. No, he wasn't. I just added that because, well, I was afraid some ordinary person might be listening in. The time to be serious is either when you're young, starving, or still ignorant. At the natural four-dimensional level, the stress of the mind is the health of the mind. Little wonder that some pursue a new understanding of what might constitute intellectual soundness. One way by which life has historically kept this sort of activity in check is that whenever someone has come up with a new word for it, such as mystical, transcendental, and the like, local conditions will soon turn it into a religious term which dilutes its potential impact sufficient for general purposes. Proverb recall and correction. Men slid into proclaiming that honesty is the best policy based on the forgotten and never realized fact that a naked mind is one best dressed. Another reason that you find so many mystics in the fashion world. There is a legend that says that Adam returned to earth no more than 800 years after his death and attempted to set the record straight by telling some people of that time that he now realized he had been mistaken in saying that he had spoken with God, when what he had actually unknowingly reported on was man's initial experience with thinking. Oh, and there is a footnote to the tale that further says Adam was pretty discouraged by the reaction he received to this news, which I guess is more support for that popular cliche that what goes around comes around to kick its source in the ass. The difference between the awakened and ordinary, intelligent, sane, civilized people is that the latter quite commonly have words to live by. After many years of certain efforts, one man's mind said to him, "If you are indeed so smart, then why has it not made you more conscious?" And he thought, "Ha, you're a fine one to ask that." One man held a contest to decide who was the most irritating to hear speak, himself or other people. And he was the only entry he allowed. Descriptions after the stakes are upped. Until you discover your mind as a perfect mirror and metaphor of what everyone else is thinking, you're not. Once mankind was on the intellectual express, a few realized that the source of their dissatisfaction was that they wanted to be further on down the line. And then after a few more saw quite clearly what was needed to accomplish this, they conceived of the idea of it requiring massive amounts of information and complex efforts so as to cover up what they had seen as being actually involved. Thus was mysticism, as it is publicly and commonly known, born. Men do not the fool feel when wrestling with cumbersome, multifolded maps. Didn't help, did it? And seeking to deposit praise where patently due, one chap notes that man displays singularity once again in the fact that he is the only creature who will risk death in a burning building rather than exiting same unfashionably dressed. And finally, for the few, there is but one acceptable speed: escape velocity. I thought we'd do something different in honor of the fact that tonight is the 100th birthday of the very first match played between the teams of Tristan and Isolde and Lever and Stoller. And as many of you, well, I'm sure, I thought what we'd do is everyone here in the studio and you people at home, we'd have a sing-along and do 3 of the most popular songs from that show. The first one being the superiority under certain conditions of the imitation over the original. Then that second big hit from the second scene of how convenient inconvenience can be, and wrapping up with that always show-stopping finale wherein the chorus steps forward and sings that memorable tune. Well, let's replace all of our mundane thoughts with Buddha thoughts. And perhaps the best way to go about this would be turn this into a medley, being a nicer sounding term than mishmash. Because I thought that at your behest, I would make all of these sons of bitches fit. Since alone, they seem to probably strike any sane person as being totally moot. Perhaps moots cubed holds more promise. And then again, perhaps not. The first song is certainly reminiscent of what we were mentioning last time, that is very common knowledge here in Italy, but throughout most of the other parts of the sophisticated world, is fairly well known as right outside of Palermo here, there is a faux alpine village. Well, not unlike the one that perhaps some more familiar to some of you over in Paraguay, but at any rate, you know there's this little alpine village. It's actually a tourist attraction, but it is from the surface, it is made up to look just like a Bavarian German village. And as I was noting, as you know, in Germany, the home of the Oktoberfest, for instance, it only goes on, believe it or not, 1 month. Yes, that's right, no, October. But then I pointed out that in our little sham, our little touristy alpine village here, right outside of Palermo, Oktoberfest runs 10 months a year. Well, not everybody can be here during 1 month. And where we more or less ended up last time was I went ahead and introduced, or reminded you of the title of this opening song that so many people seem to enjoy, that under certain conditions, the imitation can be superior to the original. Now that, to bring you up to date, to refresh your memory, is the background of that particular number in the show. The second one is this. I'm sure you'll immediately recognize it once I start. But there was the owner of a freight line, in response to complaints by motorists over the problems that trucks can cause to ordinary traffic. Well, you know, like those big parts of carcasses of these huge tires just fall off in the road and can cause accidents, make me swerve. Just the size of these big rigs themselves flying down the highway and them getting in line, you're not being able to pass. Anyway, just the problems. And the owner responded to this motorist's complaint by pointing out how much of modern life is dependent upon trucking. And he started enumerating the many things, having fresh fruits and vegetables, and the low prices paid that consumers must pay for electronic home gear. And all this he was pointing out is due to the trucking industry. Not only the lower prices, but some things would not even be available were it not for trucking industry. We could not have fresh vegetables, lettuce here in Nebraska in the heart of winter. Did we not have the truckers bringing it, if not directly from Southern California, at least from the freight line, from the rail lines that could be hundreds of miles from you, to your local market? So he pointed all this out. The point being, as the song says, that many people don't realize it, but how convenient inconvenience can actually be. And the third song, that standing ovation number, is, and I assume, of course, you will not, those of you that might not have a full, deep, multi-exposure to this show, you will not inadvertently or even verdantly fall into the trap of sarcasm, cynicism with this story. But the story is of Buddha showing up here in the final act, but he shows up and he points out the need, the advantage not to have preference in your thinking. Not to hold one idea, to believe that one idea that you might think should have precedence and take preference over other ideas. And those who understood what he said, who thought they did, that's when the chorus begins to come up stage. They realize, and they decide, after Buddha makes his exit, they decide what we will do then. We will replace these shoddy, cheap, mundane ideas we've been having with Buddha ideas. Why it brings the house down at the conclusion of every show, I leave to your discretion. But now to mesh and mash these together. The way in which our fake Bavarian town here in Italy can, under certain conditions, from certain views, be superior to the original is, if you're wanting to experience Oktoberfest, obviously being that there is a superiority without any question. That should you have your vacation, you and your family, and you can only have a few weeks off in the middle of spring, I'm sorry, you have missed the real Oktoberfest. But you can, at almost any time of year, come a bit further right here into Italy, go up to that little village, and chances are experience it. No matter in May, you can experience Oktoberfest. Without any doubt, under those conditions, there is a superiority to the imitation, in this case, under these conditions, to the original. Now, what could that possibly have to do with a man's consciousness? Well, nothing. Jesus, everything can't be connected to that. I just thought I was going to bring up the show since many of you are interested. Oh, all right. I should have saved that to the last act because it has to do with a kind of method of dealing with your own so-called thought processes. I wonder if anybody could just go ahead and put that together and we just skip it and you say, I see what you mean. All right, could you file it under sort of a subcategory of doing a parody of oneself, at least mentally? The imitative art, it could have been last, and maybe it will be before this is over. The imitative, an imitation can, under certain conditions, be superior to the original. If we take the so-called world of human knowledge, intelligence, anyone meeting their own, the collective of humanity's own definition and descriptions of what is intelligent, so it's not ours, not mine, but just what is normally assumed to be an intelligent man, if you ask him, is his intelligence all conclusive, all encompassing? Does he know the secret of life? Does he know everything about the nature of life? And again, assuming that he meets all the general qualifications of being ordinary and intelligent and sane, he will say, certainly I do not. If you ask people, I'm asking you, but if we ask this ordinary person, do you think anyone's ever done that? They go, no. Do you think it is natural to humans? Has it been natural? Is there any sign that that should be our natural state and something's wrong, something's missing on your part, that in some way you're flawed? You go, no. It would really be pushing it to ask such a sane, ordinary, reasonable man to take it any further and to ask him, would you think that perhaps humanity's general conception, general description, their general picture of what should be intelligence, or what could be human intelligence operating at its maximum, at its fullest, do you think perhaps the picture is misaligned? Do you think perhaps the picture is in error? Then he doesn't know what to say, because you're asking the mind to say, boy, minds suck, don't they? And if you're sane, that's one of the definitions of sanity. And being ordinary is your mind will reject it. On the contrary, as always, which I always throw this in, I don't know whether anybody enjoys it yet or not, that on the wherewithal, on the other foot, a sure sign by ordinary definitions and ordinary acceptance of what's what. If you ask a man, do you think that your mind is flawed? And they go, oh yeah. Then you assume he is. A sane mind will not say, well, no, I'm a little on the nutso side. There is something missing. They left a piece. They left a brick out of my load. They left a tie rod out of my engine, and all those other metaphors. Yes, there is something seriously wrong with me. You know, well, hey, there's something seriously wrong with him, or he wouldn't say that. Could we have several seconds just in homage to how seldom the actual truth, as humans like to call it, actually steps forward in life and just stands there and takes its clothes off and says, this is the way it is, and it's actually that way. That's one of the few times, but notice, why I keep bringing up such as this about sanity and insanity, notice everyone else, all the sane people, go, this is one of the few times that they will take what says the truth and take it as the truth, but miss the point. One quick time. You ask an ordinary sane person, well, is there any chance that your mind is seriously flawed? They go, well, no. They can explain it. They will not necessarily get extremely defensive, but they will certainly, if you go, well, you just admitted that you do not know everything. You've been studying. Well, yeah. Well, you're 50 years old. You've got 2 PhDs, yeah. You still read vociferously? Yes. Well, you don't think maybe that there's something wrong with your brain, your mind, that you have not got life figured out at the age of 50 or maybe 75, and you go, I got news for you. 75, look at the actuarial tables. The man goes, no. You don't find anything strange that you've studied all your life, that you have replayed Dr. Faustus, perhaps without being able to strike a deal with the Devil of the Month Club, but you have replayed trying to gain the whole world, trying to weigh the artistic, the philosophical, the scientific, largest that is man's legacy. And you find, and you still do not understand life. That's correct. And you don't think maybe there's something wrong with your mind. Well, no. And then you turn around to somebody else, and go through some little something, just a guy on the street, and say, by the way, we're doing a little survey. Do you think there's anything wrong with your mind? The guy goes, do I? You know immediately. If you're ordinary, you immediately accept that as the truth. But it's one of the few times in human experience, in ordinary experience, that the truth steps right out and goes, yes, here I am, and exposes itself. And people see it and accept it and yet miss the point. I can't do it again. See, that's one reason it can do things like that and you miss the point, is I can expose the exposer. And normally your mind goes, so? You go look at him. You go, I've seen a naked idea before. Yeah, but look. He's no more than he appears to be. The idea is just what it appears to be. Well, I can see that. But don't you get it? Normally it's not. Not what? Not what it appears to be. Well, what it appears to be is whatever it appears to be to me normally. So how can it both appear to be what it is and not appear to be what it is? Of course, by now I'm out of... But I would have to say, that's the flipping point. But back to something that almost makes sense. Oh, ye a little, that makes a lot of sense. How about too much sense? Well, it's too naked. I don't mind a person exposing themselves, but not that much. For those of you that like it another way. The crowd that came to see Buddha, well, yes, we wanted to hear awakened ideas, but not that awakened. Put some clothes back on. And of course, Buddha, Muhammad, and everybody does put some clothes back on as soon as they begin to do what? Put some clothes back on? No. Can you conceive of the possibility, even metaphorically, of man's ordinary intelligence being an imitation of the real? Now, I could get people to go along with that ordinary mind. They go, well, yeah, I could see that. And then they could say, in response to what I've just been describing, they could say, well, that's all you've been describing right now is the fallibility of the human mind, that it cannot, as of yet, or whether it ever can or not, but the inability of the human mind to swallow and digest all of reality. And so, yes, I can see what you're calling. I'm speaking for this ordinary person. They can say, yes, I can see why you would say that human intelligence operating at its normal, at its best level, could be seen, at least metaphorically, surely, as an imitation of what it should be. Because to say it's an imitation of the real would be that the human mind would simply look out upon life, do a few calculations, ponder it a few minutes, or a few days, a few months, but surely within a man's lifetime, within a reasonable period of his existence, that the mind would go, and they'd put it all together and go, okay, got it, fold the book, going about its business. So that would be, an ordinary person might say, assume that I refer metaphorically to that being the real and what we normally experience is the imitative. I hate for ordinary people to try to interpret metaphors like that. I mean, it's the best they can do, but crap. That made too much sense. Plus, they had it backwards. I'm assuming you followed all that from an ordinary view. And I say they got it backwards. Rather than saying that what man's ordinary intelligence is, what his mind is operating right now, is an imitation of the real, of what it could be or what it should be. How about look at it another way? Just as valid. Don't call some way other than what it is now the way it should be, because if that's the way it should be, then why isn't it that way? So to call the real, and what we currently do an imitation of what it could be backwards. This could be superior. There's some reason that life does not want you to know. Well, what if over here I'm pointing, that's the real. What if that is the real Oktoberfest? 4 weeks a year, 4.2. But down here in the imitative village, in the imitation intelligence, it's open 10 months a year. And if that doesn't satisfy you, I can go ahead and say the son of a bitch is open year-round. It is, come to think about it. I don't know why I said 10 months. It's open year-round. Well, any good tourist attraction is. Jesus, you knew that. I misspoke. So you would not say that there's a possibility that the way humans ordinarily think, that even though it seems to be inchoate, inconclusive, unfinished, unrealized, could you not see that compared to all the alternatives to that, all the wherewithals of that, of it being finished, completed, absolute, unconditionally certain, if that is to be taken from my original description, if that would be the original way that man should be thinking, and then what we do now, which fits none of that criteria, it would be the imitation of it, you could just as well say, wait a minute. Well, don't say that because it always slows things down. But you could say that right now, what you're calling, or what they were tending to call the imitative, could have a certain kind of superiority, even if we don't change the description of it being imitative compared to something else, that could still be superior. Or else, why does life have that as being the norm? How about the possibility that if ordinary people, if all of humanity could get into real Oktoberfest at once, there would be none. Okay. What if, let's call the real intelligence, let's call that the true understanding of life, let's just call it that. What if everyone truly understood life? What if that would be the real? And what if life does not want that? What if that would not be salubrious to its health? What if that would be detrimental to man's continued progress, to life's continued progress, I should say? We're just a byproduct. What if that were true? Then life would not, if we're still calling the direct, true perception of what life is, understanding what life's about, if that would be a nice shorthand and genuine description of what real intelligence would be, and that men do not have that collectively, that men do not have that in anything resembling a rule, then could it be that this original intelligence of man, that is, perceiving what life's really about, and that's the end of the subject, you just see it? No. That would not be in life's best interest. And so it has given man an imitation of intelligence. But as far as life is concerned, it is superior under these conditions. It is better for men not to know than to know. And again, throughout fables, myths, fairy tales, everywhere, religion, that continues to ooze out by those who do not understand it. The obvious, the big one being that there is secret knowledge being hidden somewhere by a group of greedy or incomprehensible men, but that there is actual secret knowledge that will explain everything, but it's being hidden, it's being kept from man. Maybe. But what if it's not in the context, or it's not in the sense that it's being hidden by men from men? There's life withholding part of man's intelligence or his ability to operate at such a level to where he could actually go to real Oktoberfest. Which is what I meant by you can see the fact that if everybody on the planet could go there, if it was possible for everybody to go there, there would be no Oktoberfest. If you got the world and you got this little area and there is a discrete, an identifiable something, in this case a festival, a holiday that holds, let's say 1 million people can go there. If you take the other 5 billion and whatever million and you take them all at one time and put them inside of Germany, inside of Oktoberfest, you realize that immediately there is no such thing as Oktoberfest. You can't all be there and it be Oktoberfest. Somebody got to be outside the garden. Somebody got to be outside Germany to go, oh, what are you doing? And 6 billion people minus one, holler back this one, dude, we're having Oktoberfest. That's the only way you can do it. There has to be one guy outside the fest. There has to be one guy stepped over the boundary of France or Poland and holler, hey, what are you doing? But if they're all in Germany in Oktoberfest, there is no Oktoberfest. If everyone understood the secret of life, no. Well, continuing our relentless mooshing and mashing, now on to the second one. The owner of a freight line, in response to a motorist, a sane, a rational, an ordinary motorist, you've all done it, in response to their complaints about the many problems, I doubt, physical, observable, demonstrable, statistically valid problems that trucks cause in the normal flow of traffic. In response, in a quiet, rational, restrained manner, the owner of the freight line, yes, I know about the tire. Oh, I know about. But sir, have you considered this? And he begins to enumerate the ways in which his life, an ordinary citizen, the way in which his life would not be anything resembling or would not be at the level of quality and efficiency and that it is now, were it not. You never think about it. I mean, they're just there and all you see is the problems, given that, but you do not think about how little or how much your life, your everyday life, depends upon the trucking industry. Point being, how convenient inconvenience can actually be. I still do not feel as when I went through that I am getting anything resembling the right, even baby response to this one. Is it too much, too little? You understand the scene right quick. And this, I didn't make that, well, I don't make any of them up, come to think about it. I keep thinking I do. And every time I start to say, well, of course I just made that up, I realize, well, I didn't make that up. This takes place in print, in person, in the public forum, in private, but this happens. That's the whole scene for somebody to approach. I just picked out the owner of a freight line rather than a trucker because he represents somebody of a higher ilk, perhaps, than a gear jammer. A man with a suit and a tie, a man with a college education, a man who has large sums of money invested, has a large payroll, is a meaningful component of our Belgian economy. And someone points out, oh, trucks, the pollution. I get behind them, I can't breathe. And there's all these carcasses always laying on the highway. Their tires just come apart, and they just keep rolling on. They don't even notice it, much less stop, but they don't even know it. And the thing can fall out here, and a little small car like mine, nice and efficient, can hit that, and that could kill me and my teeny little baby. This is horrible. And the owner says, I understand all. And he can agree to some of it, go, yes, we're working on that problem, working on it. But, and then he starts pointing out all the ways in which his life. This guy, he could almost be a Luddite and complain against technology and all this, and the owner, being a fairly reasonable guy, he could respond in kind and go, I understand your complaints, we're working on them all, but let me point out, you strike me, I bet you're a health food advocate. And go, yes. Well, do you realize, and he starts giving him statistics, forcefully, authoritatively, that 98% of all health food products sold here in the Netherlands come by truck. And how? And he goes on and on. He says, and I'll bet that you whatever. Anyway, he goes into his life. I bet you enjoy listening to the radio, public PBR. Yes, I do. Do you understand? Is that Pabst Blue Ribbon or the public radio? Well, never mind. I guess according to what part of the country. PBR, Pabst Blue Ribbon. Anyway, he can start pointing out that radios, that consumer electronics would not be at the affordable price. He could say, how many do you have? The man might say, well, I have a radio in almost every room in my house. They said, you realize it is a known fact, based upon the import price, if it were not for the trucking industry, consumer electronics would be at a minimum 17.8% higher at the retail level than they are now. He goes through some of this. And the point being that this reasonable motorist with these complaints at the end, when he says, you just don't realize you or anyone else. I understand your complaints and they're valid. We're working on each and every one of them. But taking all of that into consideration, looked at from a larger level, you just never think about how much of an ordinary person's everyday, modern, convenient, safe, healthy life is dependent upon the trucking industry. And it stops the guy representing a reasonable segment of humanity. It stops you to hear that. Then I come in with the point being, obviously, I mean, what else are you going to make of it? How convenient inconvenience can actually be. Do you understand that it started off, you got to be able to see through all the different people's eyes, of course, in these kinds of examples, that the motorist had a quite valid, well-based, sane number of problems, complaints with trucks on the highway, from the tire carcasses to the fumes, etc. Now you got to understand that from one view there, that is quite valid. Okay, we got that. Now let's switch over to the freight line owner's view, which obviously you'd assume to begin with, if you can even refrain from any cynicism. You would obviously consider he is going to have a different view because of his different position in this scenario, that he is going to be somewhat defensive. He is not going to have a passion for the kind of complaints that the motorist did. But taking that as a given, then look at what he said. He offered explanations. He offered information, the likes of which the motorist, the ordinary person, does not normally think about, to wit, the degree to which his life would be adversely affected were it not for trucks on the highway. And so then this ordinary sane person has to go, because you can't say anything to that. Not if you're sane and you're following all this, that once he points that out, it doesn't mean that you then go out and get a bumper sticker to put on your little Volvo that says, I love truckers, or truck. But under the scene that I'm describing, this reasonable motorist would have to go, because it sounds as though, and the man spoke with authority, that this motorist, that his life would be affected to such a degree adversely if trucks were taken just like that, taken off the highway, that the silence that I was dramatizing as the motorists have to go, well, at least the would be the fact, what that is indicating is that he would have to strongly consider the fact that, well, I'd have to withdraw my complaints about trucks. If to get rid of trucks, and therefore alleviate the problems I enumerated this man, if it would have the effect that he just described, the Hobson's choice kind of thing. Then, so you just sort of left. Of course, whoever told such a story, or whatever context that you might have observed that happened, say it was an interview, the context would lend weight at the end that there would appear to be at least a implied moral to this, from one side or the other. But beyond all that, here's a point that would never be seen, is what I said, the point being, which of course is not the point being. You got to be hot-wired almost to another part of the universe to be able to see that. Well, you can do it. The point being, obviously, what else are you going to make of it? The point being, how convenient inconvenience can actually be. You just never thought about it. What if you lived in Krakow and you decided you wanted to go to Oktoberfest? Jesus, it's a day trip, half a day trip. If you want to go the real thing. But if you want to go the one that could be superior, which is here right outside of Palermo, you got to take out, it's a 2 or 3 day drive. I believe that would fit as being inconvenient. Whereas you could take a half-a-day trip and just drive over the German border, and there it is. If you can arrange to be there at the proper time. Try it to you another way. How convenient inconvenience can actually be. Back to the first song. If men are thinking, if the intelligence, if the operation of the human mind, comparatively speaking, is an imitation of the original, of the real, what it could be, then, if you take the view that I tried to get you to consider earlier, that it could be that life wants it this way. But you could say, to try and put these first two songs together, that wait a minute, not being able to figure life out is, if I may say so, an inconvenience, because I'm continually struck with questions having to do with morality or why I should think, or I can't figure out how I should feel about somebody. It's just my mind is completely on a ramble, as the wolf would say. Those of you that don't know, anyway, that was pre-Freudian. It was Dr. Burnett. My mind is on a ramble. I am dissatisfied. Here I am with all these degrees, and it seems as though what I am now thinking, to use those two terms, is inconvenient compared to convenient. Because if you ask somebody, if I could tell you the secret of life, or if I could sell it to you for a couple of bucks, something, and you had it, and you knew what life was about, do you think that would be to your advantage? Oh, yes. Well, I mean, in other words, do you think it would be convenient for a man to understand the purpose of life and where it came from, where it's going? Would that be a convenience? They'd look at you like you're an idiot. Well, certainly it would be if a man knew it. Well, if life has it arranged to where the normal operation of the human intellect is, in one sense, an imitation. It's a sham tourist version of an alpine village here in Italy, as opposed to the real Oktoberfest being held in the real Germany. But if you want to get here and not have to just slip in during a 4.2 week period, then it is superior. It is to your benefit. It's just a superior, the imitation is a superior rendition of the original. But, looked at another way, it's inconvenient to drive all this way to go to the imitation. And to push the metaphor up to a higher limit right quick, an ordinary mind should say, all right, putting those two together. See, I can do that because I'm speaking for them and me. Putting those two together, then you would think at first that the way people normally think, this imitative form of the real ability to think, then this version is inconvenient compared to what the real one would have to be. In other words, to be enlightened, to be awakened, to have the consciousness liberated, and you simply see what life is. God, what a convenience, if we're going to use that term, says this ordinary person. Aha, except this. If life has the imitation as being the norm, in other words, if you had the first song reversed, then do you have the second one perhaps reversed of thinking, well, wait a minute, the imitative form of thinking is an inconvenience compared to what would be the convenience, obviously, without a person knowing it. But they go, obviously, what a convenience would be to understand what the hell's going on here. Whereas I don't. It's inconvenient if you don't use those terms. You were wrong the first time, if you'll listen, or you could have been wrong. And I could reverse it and show that the imitation could be superior to the original, or to what would be the original, the real. Then, how about the second time? You could be wrong twice, couldn't you? Oh, all right, daydream. Pretend you could. Then you might have it wrong the second time. That the way you think now is convenient. Whereas if you actually knew what was going on, it might prove to be somewhat inconvenient. Did no one like several news items? I didn't pull them out, but one that pointed out that the human mind is the only situation, the only structure, the only arrangement that has as one of its native, natural components, one which has the theoretical ability to destroy, to bring down the entire operation. That doesn't fit your general criteria for inconvenient. I mean, if your mind fell apart on you here at this stage in life, and thus far you kind of slipped by, you fooled everybody, you know, you're still free and you're not on serious amounts of Prozac or something. In other words, you pass for being relatively sane. How would you like for that poor old son of a gun to fall apart now on you? No, that could prove probably extremely inconvenient, if I may say so. I thought maybe you would. So we got that song straightened out, right? How about the finale? There's always some trepidation in bringing this one up because it is so open to, almost invitational to, sarcasm and but that really misses it. Because there is none intended when I relate the story. There's no cynicism, no sardonicism. Don't look that up. No irony. It's just the facts, man. That's all it is. That Buddha comes out, to use him again, that scenario. Comes out, says he has found the secret of life. He has found the real village. He's found where they have Oktoberfest year-round, but they actually have it. So he's found that. So obviously he knew where the imitations were. You got to understand that. That's a given also. Then he says he also understands the difference between what's convenient and what's inconvenient. And he says he has decided life appears to be an imitation of a real life. Life appears to be imitative of something. It appears to be inconvenient. And then he says what it is this. Life is suffering. And they all went, yes, oh, yes. He had their attention. And he said, and I have discovered the cause of suffering. They hearkened thereto, or hearkened to, and went, yes. And he says, it's desire. And that'll strike many people, just that. But he did not let up. He said, and I now know the secret to be free of desire. Have no preference. And some of them, I'm just giving them credit, to varying degrees, some of them thought, it took them a while, it was not on the spot. But some of them even there, some of them in the next act, some of them in the next lifetime, generations down the line, here it is 3,000, 2,500 years later, and there are people still rediscovering it in their own lifetime. Wait a minute. The freedom from desire and preference was not who you were going to bed with, what you were eating, how rich you were, what neighborhood. It was all here. That's the only thing that could have any pertinence to a change in consciousness. It was not having preference in the world of behavior, the world of events. It's in the world of states, the world of my mind. It is so clear now. And they decided, after they realized that, well, here's what I will do. Instead of all this damn junk, all this shoddy, cheap, mundane, all these ideas I'm having, and I always had, now I realize it, here's what we'll do. From henceforth, we'll only, or at least try it, but we'll only have Buddha thoughts, Buddha ideas. Of course, by then, he's in the wings, and he goes, oh, shit. Well, theatrically, because he knew that would happen, but that's, you understand, and that's not a comment on humanity, it's not a comment on Buddhists, it's not a comment on Broadway musicals. It is a comment. It is a naked, in-your-face comment having to do with the nature of the mind. Because what can you do if that was if that was of its time? The Boone description of the way in which to approach increasing one's awareness, increasing one's understanding, is to avoid, to abdicate, having a preference of any idea over another idea. And let's say that is one of the better descriptions. Let's say it's just first class. What is the mind going to make of it? It's why it's not open to any cynicism. As I point out, anybody that's cynical or sarcastic or full of irony is just stupid. Irony is the greatest exemplar of stupidity imaginable. There's people go, well, that was totally unexpected. Where have you been? Did you just get here on earth? Did you just come into this dimension? At any rate, what is the mind going to do? It hears that, and it heard it from Buddha. Or it could have been Muhammad, Jesus, anybody. Anybody that understood it. And they went, aha! We have been worrying over whether, let's say that they grew up in the Hindu culture, whether we should actually make way when cows come down the street, or just give them the right of way if they get pushy about it. Whether we should go to temple on Thursday or Saturday. All this kind of stuff. No, he's right. over these meaningless, just these mundane, just this trash. Well, not trash, but just these crappy, everyday ideas. They're just meaningless. I see. He's saying that it's an absolute, we're burning our attention up. We're wasting all potential uses of consciousness by worrying about, well, wait a minute, this idea that we should attend Hindu temple on Thursday instead of Saturday, or we should eat this or eat that. I see it now. He mentioned it's a waste of time. All that crap. Here's why. Instead of even worrying about that, now that I see what it is, we'll try our best. We will not have thoughts like that. We'll now only think Buddha thoughts. We'll only have Buddha ideas. And on the surface, you think, well, now you're getting somewhere. Now, I say on the surface, that's a man's mind going, well, now you're getting somewhere. What do you expect the mind to say? The mind can not only not break its arm or its elbow patting itself on the back. That's obvious. The worst thing is, though, it can't stab itself. Well, now, of course, you see that concludes the medley. That's how they all fit together. I guess that's the conclusion of tonight's survey of the German musical comedy. Thank you for your attention.